What's up team, my name is Mark and welcome back to Making Instagram Bangers, the series where I teach you all the tips and tricks that I use to shoot and edit my photos. Today we're going to be looking at a couple of techniques that I use to change the atmosphere of photos. We're going to be looking at how I took this photo right here, which was taken during the day in January, and turned it into this photo right here, which looks and feels like a sunset photo, sort of dusk in Taiwan. It looks really, really cool. I'm going to be teaching you a couple of tricks on how to balance light, how you can create your own sort of light contrast between golden hour and blue skies using radial filters, and how you can create your own sunsets if you want. Now, full disclosure, this might not work with every single photo, but it's a good way of learning how to use the different tools, especially radial filters, graduated filters, and just unlocking some of their potential and sussing out some of the cool things that you can do with them. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's go. Okay, so we're in Lightroom right now, and the first step to any edit for me is always to scroll all the way to the bottom, remove chromatic aberrations, and enable profile corrections. That way it's done, don't have to deal with it. Now, let's scroll back to the top. So the idea for this photo is to try and emulate a sunset vibe. So for this first stop, I want to see how much dynamic range I've got. So I'm going to pull the highlights down. Cool, so there's quite a lot to work with in the sky. We went from being really pale to having a few clouds, and you can almost already see some yellow popping up here, which is really, really good for us. Now I'm going to pull the shadows up, but I'm not going to pull them up too much because I want that sort of dark vibe. I don't want the shadows to be too bright. I want natural shadows in the image, which you would have if there was a sunset. Now I'm going to pull the whites up a little bit, somewhere around here. So again, I'm holding down the options key, which enables me to see how well I'm setting the white balance. So something like this should be fine. There we go. And I'm going to pull the blacks down. Same thing, holding down the options key just to make things easier. There we go. That looks really good already. Now, I'm a big fan of clarity, so I'm just going to put a little bit of clarity on there. Not too much. I don't want it to be too sharp. Maybe plus 17, something like that. That looks pretty good already. So next step, I'm going to set the white balance to auto, see how that looks. That actually looks quite well. I always like to play with the different white balance modes and then fine tune them. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm quite happy with how this looks as it stands. Now, because I want to introduce a little bit of a moody sunset vibe, I'm going to add a little bit of a fade. Now, to do this, I go down to the tone curve. I'm going to add 3 dots in the shadows, midtones, and highlights. I'm just going to crush the blacks ever so slightly. There we go. And then pull down on here, and there we go. This creates an S curve, which adds a little bit of contrast to your image. Now, because we want to create a sunset vibe, here's the secret tool. So if we scroll down all the way to split toning. So what split toning does is it allows you to add extra color to your highlights or your shadows, as opposed to hue, saturation, and luminance, which just allows you to move existing colors around. So for this tutorial, I'm going to add some nice gold and orange in the highlights, something like that. That's already looking much nicer. And then I'm going to add a little bit of blue and maybe a little bit of a pink tint in the shadows. There we go, something like that. So if we look at before and after, the whole mood has shifted. See all these pinks have started popping up down here. We've got a lot of yellow and orange and gold coming from the left. It's already looking much more like a sunset. And now here comes the secret tool. I'm going to add 2 radial filters. One on one side, right here, something like that, where the light and the sun would come from. Let's boost the warmth up a little bit. And then add a little bit of pink, something like that. Maybe bring the highlights down slightly because it is a little bit too bright. There we go, something like that. I might just bring the whites down just a tad. There we go, that looks much better. Now I'm going to add a second radial filter on the right this time. There we go, just where the blue of the sky is. Now notice how these blues of the sky have now got like an orange and pink tint to them. So I'm just going to drop the temperature. There we go, just to reintroduce a little bit of blue into the sky and create a nice contrast between the gold on the left and the blue on the right. There we go. So now we've got our sunset going on. This is looking really cool already. Now, one thing is, I feel like the bottom area is a little bit too much clutter and it's a little bit too bright. So I'm just going to grab a graduated filter and place it here. And now I'm going to drag the exposure down just to darken that area and just to emphasize the shadows that would naturally occur if there was a sunset. I want these highlights here to be stronger than all of this dark area here, as if the sun was coming straight down from the left during sunset. There we go, this is already looking pretty good. So, next step, I'm going to play around with the colors a little bit. So if we start looking at the reds, there we go. I want the reds to be really strong and vibrant. So I want really strong reds here. That's already looking really good. I might pull down the saturation just slightly so it's a strong red but not too harsh. Now let's move the oranges around. Let's have a look at what that does. I might put it down just a little bit. Yeah, if I put it to the right, I'm going to get more green, which is not what I want. I want more sort of orangey tints. There we go. Same thing with the yellows. Let's have a look at what that does. That brings the green out of the trees. That could look nice, but I do want to push it more towards the orange and the teal. There we go. Now for the skies, what happens when I hit aqua? Not much. What happens if I hit blue? There we go. So blue's looking pretty strong, so I might push the blues up just a little bit. I might add a little bit of saturation to see what that does. There we go. And if I bring the luminance down, maybe push it up. The idea is I'm playing with the colors of the sky to try and get it to a sort of more natural blue, but without contrasting too much with the gold on the left. So it's all about taking it almost color by color and looking at how things pan out. So if I look at the before and the after, it is a very subtle adjustment. The main adjustment happens to the reds down here, but it does add to the image. Now, if I scroll all the way to the bottom, we're going to make some final adjustments. I might add just a little bit of a vignette just to emphasize that dark shadow around the edges. That's quite nice. And I'm going to head down to calibration, and I might force the colors into a little bit more of a teal and orange look. I feel like the tree has got some nice golden colors, and if we push it in the teal and orange direction, we'll get more of an autumn vibe out of this image. So if I pull the blue down, something like this, there we go. I might pull the saturation down just a little bit. I don't want this effect to be too strong. And then push the reds up. There we go. We're pushing it more towards orange on these reds down here. That's looking pretty good. And maybe pull the saturation down ever so slightly. Now let's look at the before and after. It's quite a subtle effect, but it does play into the overall picture. Okay, now you may have noticed there's one final thing in this image that really doesn't look right, and it's this cable that's running from this building here all the way to the tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the spot removal tool up here and get rid of it right now. So we're just going to brush all the way up this area here, and we'll stop just before the tree. There we go, so we don't get any weird shadows going on. And there we go. So much better. Now, the problem with this tool is sometimes if you get a little bit too close to buildings, it sort of creates this weird gradient thing going on. In this case, I started just after the building and ended just before the tree, and that worked fine. And now you can't even notice it at all, even though there is a little bit of a thing sticking out here. It looks like it's part of the building itself. And there you have it. It looks really, really cool. So the last step, of course, is always to crop. So we're going to crop this to 4:5, which is the Instagram ratio, and leave it at something like this. And there you go. Boom. Fantastic. And there you have it, guys. Super easy stuff. We took this photo right here, taken sort of midday, and turned it into this sunset banger right here using just graduated filters and playing around with split toning and colors. The idea is you want to create a contrast and push colors towards the gold, orange, and red, but also add some extra blue on the side to create a nice gradient from gold to blue. That way it looks more like a sunset. It's also important to create some shadows and make sure you do have enough shadows so that it looks realistic. If it was midday and the sun was right in the middle of the sky and you didn't have any shadows, it might be a little bit harder to pull the sunset effect off. But in this scenario, we had some nice light coming from the left already, which meant that it was easy to create that sunset vibe and to transform the photo entirely. So there you have it, guys. If you found any of this helpful, I'd love it if you'd like the video. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you want to see next. I'm always up for new tutorials. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I'm a photographer and videographer, and I teach you all the stuff that I know. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys really soon. In the meantime, stay creative, guys. Take care.